Come on in, have a seat. Please open to 1010 in your teal hymnal. This will be the hymn, the gathering hymn for this entire month of November. Whether it fits with the theme for the day or even the theme for the month, we're going to sing it. Okay? It is We Give Thanks. Please rise and body your spirit. 1010, little introduction, Peng Chang.
Please join us in the reading for the lighting of the chalice. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open mind. This is the church of the helping hands. This is the church of the loving heart. Together we care for the church and each other. Good morning. My name's Ravensong. It is my pleasure to welcome you to St. John's Unitarian Universalist Church. St. John's is proud to be a welcoming congregation, and as such, we honor and value the racial, economic, cultural, age, physical ability, sexual orientation, and gender diversity of our members and visitors. Know that wherever you are in your journey and however you are feeling, you are welcome here, and we're happy you chose to be with us today. A special welcome to visitors this morning. I invite you to stop by the welcome table in our lobby and to join us for refreshments and conversation in our fellowship hall after the service. There's a lot of good stuff going on at St. John's these days. Please take a look at the announcements in your order of service. You may also want to check out the bulletin boards in our fellowship hall. As a reminder, please turn off or silence your cell phones, and again, welcome this morning. Now, if you will join me in the affirmation. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands.
Come on up, choir. We're going to start opening hymn today as the choir. Say a couple of words. Today we're going to sing Woke Up This Morning with My Mind Stayed on Freedom. So Melissa, a little while ago, she's like, I didn't know I was going to get mentioned. She came and was like, we should sing something to encourage people to go vote. And we went through several options, and this is where we landed. I think it's a great choice to encourage you all to go and vote. Also, if you think about it, it can connect also with self-forgiveness in the sermon today. Because if your mind needs to be free, you also need to be free of guilt for yourself, maybe forgiveness for others, and those things. So hear the words however you need to today, but may they speak to your heart and soul, and may they call you to action. Now I got to find what I did with my music. Okay.
It was stayed on freedom. Well, I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Walking and talking with my mind.
My mind, it was stayed on freedom. Well, I'm walking and talking with my mind. Stayed on freedom. I'm walking and talking with my mind. Stayed on freedom. Hallelujah. 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 Come on and walk, walk. Come on and walk, walk. Come on and walk, walk. With your mind on freedom, walk, walk. Come on and 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 walk, 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 walk. You gotta talk, talk. You gotta talk, talk. You gotta talk, talk. You gotta talk. You gotta talk, 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 talk.
'Cause it ain't no harm to keep my mind.
My mind, keep it stayed on freedom. It ain't no harm to keep my mind stayed on freedom. It ain't no harm to keep my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah,
Sorry. Thank you, choir. That was fun. This is the time in our service where we bring our prayers forward by placing stones in the bowl of sand. If you have something you'd like to share publicly, please write it down and bring it forward. Or for those at home, please type it into the chat. Come up, Ashley.
I'm going to start with the words of, just a few words from Rabbi Jessica Kessler Marshall, because she summed up far better than I could. I think we are called to forgive each other time and time again. It is the nature of being in relationship. It can be hard to forgive others, but often it is harder still to forgive ourselves. Yet the reasons to forgive ourselves are the same as for forgiving others. It is how we become free of the past. It is how we move on, heal, and grow. It is how we make meaning out of our suffering. Forgiving ourselves frees our energies to tell a new story of who we are. And I wanted to read that because she did a better job of explaining what I wanted to do today, which was to just suggest, and I know many of you have heard it before. I think I may have even spoke about it before because it's meaningful to me. The practice of Tonglen, and I'm most familiar with Pema Chodron's version of this, particularly her version of on-the-spot Tonglen. So there is a whole formal Tonglen meditation involving stages and the ringing of bells, and I have done that and it's valuable. But she has a version that's on the spot, and the two practices inform each other, but the on-the-spot kind does not require closing your eyes or visualization or anything. It's very quick. And it came to mind when I was reading this about freeing ourselves, because the point is, she talks about it as a way to deal with being blocked, either with negative emotions about yourself, negative emotions about anything. It's also a way to share positive emotions. So this is very short and very quick. So I'm just gonna, it takes like a minute. So I'm just gonna suggest that, think of something that is difficult. It may be something that it may be someone else who is suffering, or it may be your own suffering. It may be your own sense of feeling stuck. It may be your own sense of being unable to forgive someone else or forgive yourself. You just think of that just for a second. Now, out and about, you don't necessarily have to think of it. It might be in front of you. And all you do is you just breathe in that feeling. Just breathe it in. And it's, I think the important part of that is the sense of motion. Okay, so if breathing it in doesn't work, then just think of taking it in some way. Okay? You just enfold it. And then the next thing is to breathe out a feeling of ease, or light, or comfort. And that's it. And that's all there is to it. There's nothing more needed than that. And the trick is just to try to remember to do it when we are stuck, or when we are, giving ourselves a hard time, or when we're so angry with someone else and unable to forgive. And the point is that to keep that feeling of motion, okay? That's all it's about. So, because, like I said, that feeling of, that lets us keep going. So that's all it is. You breathe in that whatever is stuck, frankly. Breathe it in, take it in. Maybe And part of why that's revolutionary is because we don't want to do that. We want to push it away, or maybe we want to hold on to it really tight. The point is, and then you breathe out. You breathe out lightness or release or whatever. And that's all it is. Thank you. And now I will take the kids downstairs and we will go for our own programming, but I've been lighting the chalice so that we take the chalice down with us. So.
No. Going to sing 414. Peng Chang, will you play it through once for us?
We have a few joys and sorrows that we would. Sorry. Doing something new with the joys and sorrows today, so I'm sorry. We have a couple of joys and sorrows that I'd like to read from Barbara Haddon. She welcomes her first great-grandchild on September the 29th. Her name is Aviana Fritz. Yay. From Sally Larson. Barb Gomes and Ken Hoffman have been traveling. Barb has just had surgery in Barcelona for a fractured femur. Surgery went well, and they'll be home when she gets the okay to travel. Sally Larson can answer any questions. And then from Edie, Curtis, Pamela, and Lulu were supposed to move back from Romania back to Germany as he accepted a different position with Bosch. As Lulu is a South African citizen, their move has been delayed, waiting on her visa. It was denied as she has not yet adopted. More international red tape. And then from online, a joy, new technology. Joy from the tech team for the wonders of technology and how it serves our congregation. Join me in an attitude of prayer. Spirit of community in which we find common purpose, we hold each other in care and concern. We are grateful for our supportive lives together. May we carry these values with us throughout the week. Amen.
If you could open to 1037 in the Teal Hymnal. We've done this before, but Peng Cheng will play the melody that you will sing, and then I will say some words, and then we'll follow through. Hopefully you keep track of them as we go through with just the words up there. So 1037. Peng Cheng, will you just play it once, and then I'll read the first words. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference. We give ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible. For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For the selfishness that sets us apart and alone. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit. For losing sight of our unity. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
Good morning. It's good to be back, friends. What is the worst thing you have ever done? Take just a second to think about it. Okay, I don't suspect you'll need much longer to remember the details. If you are like me, you keep the worst thing that you've ever done on a convenient shelf just inside your subconscious, easy to grab when you have a spare minute as you drift to sleep or while you're getting your teeth cleaned or while you're waiting in the TSA line at the airport. It doesn't really matter when or where. Any time is a good time to think about when you got really upset and said the worst imaginable thing you could think about to your mom. Why? Why is it so easy to access the worst things we've ever done? Why do they rush into our minds as we lay awake at night? There are some interesting psychological reasons behind this, which were shared on one of my favorite podcasts a while back. If you haven't listened to Hidden Brain on NPR, I can't recommend it enough. It mixes the best of social science with storytelling and applies it to complex psychological, ethical, and world problems. It's very you. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they started printing the transcripts in the back of Singing the Living Tradition. In this particular episode, the host interviews University of Texas at Austin psychologist Dr. Kristen Neff about her research on self-forgiveness and self-kindness. To understand self-forgiveness and self-love, we have to begin with the opposite. I'm sure you all know it well. It's that inner voice inside you, the one that is self-critical, calls you names, points out your flaws, looks at you very harshly in the mirror, judges your choices, and generally all around thinks you're not very good. This inner critic can be very harsh. It often says things to ourselves that we would never say to someone else in person. In Neff's research, she found that individuals are significantly more compassionate to other people than they are to themselves. She found that when we fail, some of us react to ourselves with coldness, while others disassociate, abandoning themselves. We shut down, we go numb, or most commonly, we feel shame. This concept of self-doubt and self-criticism is a recurring theme on my favorite TV show, RuPaul's Drag Race. If you are not familiar, I will give you the quick TV guide recap. A group of drag queens from across the country compete in various talent competitions, acting, sewing, dancing, and most importantly, the lip sync, to earn cash prize and win a crown. It is incredibly entertaining, but it also has heart. Each week, the eponymous host, RuPaul Charles, provides feedback to the contestants, some good, some very funny, and some not so good. During these critiques, we often learn how the contestants struggle with their confidence when trying to present their authentic selves. They let fear and self-doubt get in the way. It's that same voice that is inside all of our heads. It's what RuPaul calls the inner saboteur, and it prevents the queens from giving it their all and snatching the crown. While we might not all be glamorous drag queens competing for fame and prizes, many of us, I suspect, also feel limited by our own inner saboteur. Why is this? Why do we allow negative self-talk to continue? Why do we so often find ourselves stuck in the state of shame and self-criticism? It might help to understand the biological and evolutionary root of this behavior. In small doses, a little self-criticism can be helpful. If we think about it in terms of our prehistoric ancestors, you might frame it this way. You see a mountain lion, you think to yourself, he's probably a nice, friendly, furry kitty. No need to panic. Large cat proceeds to chase you. There's a narrow escape that ensues. You stop, we collect our thoughts. That wasn't a very smart thing to do, we learn. How about next time we see a large cat, we take it a little more seriously? It's a neat evolutionary trick. We reflect on our own behavior, provide ourselves some critical feedback. We don't end up as dinner. It makes sense. Until it doesn't any longer. The work Neff conducted posited that self-criticism teaches us how to survive, but in our modern world, it can run into overdrive. She theorizes that it is because we confuse our ego with our actual physical selves. When our ego is threatened, it can feel very real, like a very real threat to us, as real as ending up as dinner for a saber-toothed tiger. We confuse our actual death with our ego death. And when our ego is threatened, when we make bad decisions or hurt someone we love, we cheat or lie, it challenges our own self-concept that we are at our core a good person. So our self-instinct to self-criticize kicks in to protect our self-image. The result of this criticism is a powerful emotion, shame. Neff points out that shame is not to be confused with guilt. It isn't just that we feel bad that we've done something wrong. That's guilt. It's that we think we are bad. This shame plays a role in a number of dysfunctional behaviors like depression and addiction. And it's often where we get stuck. It's the shame swamp. It's desolate, it's wet, it's inhospitable, and most of all, it's hard to make your way through. Why is it so hard to get unstuck? Neff's research shows that we often see self-criticism as noble or even heroic. We view it as a path to self-improvement. Our self-critic resists reality, believing that perfection is possible if we just try hard enough. Someday we'll be a perfect, kind, and just person who never forgets their reusable shopping bags and never honks their horns 1/16 of a second after the light turns green. We can be perfect. We are afraid that if we are kind to ourselves, we won't get anything done, that if we let ourselves off the hook, we won't change. We can't forgive ourselves lest we forget our lessons and get gobbled up by a pack of mountain lions. And here's what's so strange. For the most part, we don't believe this to be the case when we deal with others. Based on Neff's research, we are markedly and statistically more compassionate and understanding when judging others for their mistakes than we are with ourselves, especially those that are close to us. But when we deal with ourselves, we return to our old ways of thinking. We treat ourselves in punitive ways that we would never dream of treating those that we love. According to the research, this is the number one block to positive outcomes. Yes, it might get short-term compliance and results, but the longer-term consequences are very high. We may be able to belittle our way through a new diet and exercise routine or bully ourselves through college exams, but all of that negative self-talk creates anxiety, shame, depression. These negative emotions could shut down our ability to learn and grow long-term. And we may have enjoyed a short-term success, but at what cost to ourselves? But lots of us use these techniques because they work, at least initially. And when we rely on these types of short-term motivation, we ultimately feel shame. But that isn't sustainable. It bruises our ego, so we attempt to recover by improving our self-esteem. We look for ways to make ourselves feel better by playing to our ego. I'm attractive, I'm successful, people like me, I do good things. These tactics work in the short term, but are bound to lead to problems because they are built on fragile foundation. They are temporary boosts, while at the same time we continue to entertain the negative thoughts about ourselves. We get stuck in a loop of shame and reassurance, shame and reassurance, shame and reassurance. The coping mechanisms that worked when we were younger eventually stopped working. Over time, the ill effects build up within inside of us. The negative self-talk and criticism that might have motivated us when we were younger can build into toxic and self-defeating behavior if left unchecked. Of course, I don't want us to beat ourselves up for beating ourselves up. It's all natural. It's our flight or fight response. Many of us struggle with feelings of self-doubt and self-worth. But how do you move on? How do you get more self-esteem? Is there a self-esteem store? Can I buy it on Amazon? Can I find locally sourced, handcrafted self-esteem at Findlay Market? I know for me it's been a lifelong struggle, and I've had a hard time finding an answer. Recently, in a moment of reflection and meditation, I had a moment of deep discernment on this topic. Could this missing part of me, this deficiency of self-esteem, be fulfilled with God's love? Okay, I just want to stop for a second. I want to check something. Okay, I want to make sure the roof hadn't fallen in. I want to make sure the walls are still standing. Is everyone okay out there? I know for many of you, the G word is a trigger. This is a Unitarian church, after all. A few years ago, a police officer was invited to St. John's to give a talk on neighborhood safety. The officer started her remarks, what she probably is her canned speech for any time she's at a place of worship. In this place of God, she wasn't even 10 words in. Oh no, we don't believe in God here. We're all atheists, was the vocal and immediate rejoinder from the audience. It runs very deep, even for me, this distrust of the concept of God, uppercase G. Many of us have been hurt by it. It's been used as a cudgel against many of us. It's been used to shame us. Shame we took inside of us and made our own. Many of us have been hurt by it. And yet, here I am talking to you this morning about God. Please bear with me. Since the 1961 merger of the Unitarian Church of America and the American Unitarian Association, the focus of the denomination has been the seven principles, a covenant joined into through an act of democratic faith, and that is good. However, as the denomination moved from that union through the civil rights era and into the Reagan 80s with its televangelists and moral majority, the denomination moved further toward humanism. Over time, the mention of God, while not outright frowned upon, certainly became more complicated. There's nothing inherently wrong with this shift. I'd count humanist as one of the many multi-hyphenates I use to describe my own faith. But I'd like to take a look back before that day in 1961 when the two organizations formally merged. I'd like to look at the constituent parts of that union for just a moment. I want to imagine for a moment what fire filled their hearts, what drew them as a community and led them to seek their own past apart from the broader Christian communion. For the Unitarians, it was the rejection of the Trinity, questioning the divinity of Christ, and with it, the absolution of our sins, rejecting fantastic tales of a virgin birth and resurrection. For the Universalists, it was the universality of salvation. The concept of original sin was pulled out, root and all. No loving God would condemn his creation to eternal suffering. These faiths are the legacy of this congregation and are in good company in a list of what today we would call religious traditions. Generally, when we use the term liberal in this context, it is a reference to the beliefs in self-autonomy and self-rule. But I think we do a disservice if we gloss over this distinction without more consideration. Let us assume that you can broadly define religious life into three archetypes. First, those based on the primacy of the church and its hierarchy. The Catholic Church comes to mind, or the Mormons. The validity of these faiths rests on the authority of the church. The Pope interprets God's will, and it is so. Various cardinals, bishops, and priests hold the line. You have questions, the church has answers. The second is based on the fundamental belief in the infallibility of sacred text. Your modern-day evangelicals are an example. One need only read thoroughly or creatively enough to find the answers. For the third, and by far the smallest of the three, at least in our part of the world, are the mystic religions. Those that rely on personal experience to understand the never-ending revelation of God's will. It is a living God, the inward light, that of God in all of us. It is this third group that I believe the early Unitarians and Universalists belonged to. They belong to this group of seekers, brave souls not tied to tradition, a book, the ministry. What we call liberal today, I call mystic. It is easy for us to believe that we are alone in this way of thinking. In this religious landscape, it is easy for us to get gobbled up by churches with thousands of car parking lots or grand cathedrals. But we seekers, we have existed over place and time. The Quaker John Woolman described it this way: there is a principle which is pure, placed in the human mind, which in different places and ages hath different names. It is forever pure and proceeds from God. It is deep and inward, confined to no forms of religion, nor excluded from any. Where the heart stands in perfect sincerity, in whomsoever this takes root and grows, of what nation soever, they become brethren. So what of God? That controversial three-letter word that so often divides us that often divides those of us committed to the project of liberal faith. I will admit that at one time, too, I flinched at the mere mention. I had my reasons. I'm sure many of you do, too. But as I continued my journey, I realized that what some of us call God, others of us called our common humanity, what my pagan friends called the spirit of life, I called the inward light. Ultimately, I don't think it matters. At least, I hope it doesn't. While we may all start our climb at different places at the base of the mountain, we all reach the same summit. Though our journeys are different, the destination is the same. But I can't help but feel that there is something lacking in this tradition among these travelers. Where the Catholics have confession and the Baptists throw their hands up in repentance, what do we have? Having long since left behind the notion that someone or something else could absolve us of our sins, we are left to fend for ourselves. I believe that this often leaves us unable to process our shame and guilt, no other way to move past the sins we have committed. We build up an inventory of trespasses and slights, errors and wrongdoings over years, over decades. The weight we carry weighs us down. In fact, sometimes we even wear it as a badge of honor. Our self-critic tells us, I am such a good person, I know what a bad person I am. But this emotional luggage is heavy. And for spiritual travelers such as ourselves, we have to let it go. We have to leave this behind if we are to go far. We have to give ourselves compassion and kindness and support. If we don't, if we shove it down and bottle up those feelings, they will only grow in their weight. The research Krista Neff conducted showed that what you resist grows stronger. Avoiding these negative feelings only serves to strengthen them. And when we are moving forward toward ourselves, when we are forgiving towards ourselves, we can be more forgiving towards others. When we treat ourselves with compassion, we feel better about ourselves. We don't feel the need to put others down to build ourselves up. It's okay. It's okay to let go of those old feelings. It doesn't mean that we have to dismiss our past behavior. Forgiving ourselves allows us to take more responsibility, not less. It allows us to turn toward what we have done and face it head on. When we are supportive and forgiving of ourselves, we can take responsibility and move on. So now, I want us to try it together. I want us to take a few minutes and center ourselves. As we do this, I want you to listen for that voice inside you, your inner saboteur. Find the thing that you are hanging on to that brings you shame, that you can't let go of, that weighs you, that is heavy. That thing that you are having trouble setting down. Okay, now, group participation. Put your hand over your heart. Repeat after me. I forgive you. It's okay to forgive ourselves. In fact, we have to. We belong to a unique tradition, the wanderers, the seekers, the travelers. If there is no God above us, then perhaps there is some of God in each of us. And if that is so, surely we are each worthy of our own redemption. Forgot my next part. And now we invite you to share your gifts as you are able to continue the good work of this church. It is now time for the offering.
Thank you, Peng Chang. I'd like to invite Stan up for the membership moment.
Well, good morning. I've been up here several times before for a membership moment, and as I put this together, I thought, gosh, I've changed a lot. Yeah, I have. In the early 1970s, I rejected the faith to which I had been confirmed at the age of 12. I had attended services with my family, was an acolyte and a member of the Luther League. Then, for the next 18 years, I didn't have a relationship with any church. As a matter of fact, I resented having been confirmed as a member into a church where I was expected to profess beliefs about which I still had reservations. Before coming to St. John's, I really didn't know much about the Unitarian Universalist Church. The only thing I knew about St. John's was that it had a strange-looking church that wasn't far from my new home. I had never heard of Unitarian Universalism until the mid-1980s. Back then, I was a member of a pro-feminist, gay-affirming men's group in Columbus, Ohio, where some of the other members were UUs. We held concerts at First Unitarian Universalist in Columbus. I can remember thinking this was a church that was behaving differently, and that someday I would have to investigate what they were about. By that time, I had been unchurched for 15 years. When I first came to St. John's, I was a stay-at-home dad, married to a physician, and we had 2 boys. One was 3, and the other one was just a year old. Having been at home with infants and only minimal contact with adults, I was feeling a bit insecure about socializing with other adults. At St. John's, I was greeted with sincere warmth, and I don't think there was anything that I encountered that offended me. It was refreshing. I found that I agreed with all 7 of the basic principles that described who these people were. 2 of the principles really stood out: acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth. And the second was a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. It seemed that these principles meant that there really was a church that I could be part of without compromising my values. I could be authentic to what I believed, not what someone else told me I needed to be and believe. One of my earliest experiences at St. John's was to participate in a class known as Creating Your Own Theology. I began to realize that as an agnostic humanist, I could still be a spiritual person, and that there were others who were willing to help me. I've been on this spiritual journey at St. John's for 35 years now. I've come a long way from being that person who didn't believe in spirituality to now having a spiritual home here at St. John's. I still have a way to go before my behavior comes completely into line with some of the 7 principles, but I'm working on it. I still can believe in and have faith that those 7 principles can lead me to be a better person and citizen. I've found support for both the changes I wanted to make in myself as well as those I care enough about to take public action. It took a while for me to feel like I was a real member of St. John's. However, the more I volunteered and participated, the more I became to identify with this church. If you're looking for a spiritual home and feel that you value the ideas we hold in our 7 basic principles, I encourage you to get to know St. John's both as a supportive community and a spiritual home. Thank you.
We have several announcements this morning. I'm going to start by inviting Mike Nugent up.
Good morning. So as some of you all know, this week I resigned from the board. So the purpose of this is not to relitigate that, but to say that I know in my heart that decision was in the best interest of both the board and myself. But I also wanted the chance to express my profound joy and my profound thanks for the honor you gave me to serve you for the last year and a half. It meant a lot to me. It wasn't always easy, but it's something I will always carry with me. But I also feel very confident that the board is in good hands now with Melissa coming in to lead the board. I decided in the short term, at least, to keep my membership active, but I am going to take a break. That's what's in my best interest. I will always carry with me the friendships that I've made here. Some of those are very dear and will always persist. But there's one piece of this that I want to make perfectly clear. My stepping down from the board had absolutely nothing to do with Reverend Mitra. In fact, it's the exact opposite. She is the reason I joined St. John's. She has become a friend and a spiritual guide. She has pushed me at times to look places that I didn't want to look. She asked me to explore my own implicit bias, to look behind that curtain and say, what's behind there? And because of her, I'm a better person. So she will always have my unqualified support and admiration. So as we go our separate ways until our paths cross again, please know that I will always hold you in my thoughts and in my prayers. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Kathy Schell, your past president. As you know, UUs have our 7 principles that guide us. One of those is the 5th principle, which says our congregation use the democratic process to govern ourselves and to make major decisions. When Michael informed us that he was stepping down from the president's role, the board looked to our St. John's bylaws because these bylaws were adopted by members of this congregation. Here's what we found in our bylaws. In Article 9, Section 9, the issue of vacancies for trustees and church officers. It is addressed, it includes this statement. If the position of the president becomes vacant, it shall be filled by the vice president for the remainder of the year and for the subsequent year. With that guidance from our bylaws, the board has affirmed that our vice president, Melissa Rowland, is now president of St. John's Board of Trustees. Please join me in thanking Melissa for taking this responsibility.
everyone. I am Melissa Rowland. I just want to say on behalf of the board that we thank Michael Nugent deeply for his service to our community. I would like to call Jim McDonough, and the finance director, up forward, Debbie Combs in programming, Ann Shore, member at large, Nancy Henry, the secretary. If you could please come forward. We are the Board of Trustees for St. John's Unitarian Universalist Church. This community has been our spiritual home for a collective 126 years. We will govern with the guidance of our mission, principles, and bylaws. It is our honor to be in service to this beloved community. Please feel comfortable to reach out to any of us for any reason. We want to hear from you. Also, while Reverend Alice is not here today, she is still available for pastoral needs, and her contact information is in the back of your order of service. Thank you very much. We have just a couple of additional announcements this morning. Reminder that next week, November 13th, is our next Partner Church Soup and Bread Lunch. Please sign up on the board in Hanley so we can have a wonderful lunch with lots of good food. Grady Cook is out in our lobby today selling street vibes for $2. Please support him. He will be there after church. On the 20th of this month, Earth Spirit is having our next meeting. We're going to be talking about this last service as well as planning for the winter solstice service. If you want to be involved but can't attend, just email us. Email is in the bulletin. And I think that's all as far as announcements. If you will now join me in our final hymn, number 1031 in the Teal Hymnal, Filled with Loving Kindness.
Tell you all to look at the note at the bottom. We'll sing it through 3 times. The first time is I. The second time, replace I with you. And the third time, replace I with we. Little introduction, Pengcheng.
and I apologize, there was one additional announcement. Next Sunday, November 13th at 2:30 is Rick Prairie's memorial service here at St. John's. Please park at the German School if you're staying for the soup and bread lunch and/or the memorial. We could use everyone's help in preparing Kroll Pfeiffer for the reception and to guide parking for the memorial. May you have the charity to forgive yourselves, the courage to ask for forgiveness, and the compassion to forgive others. Go in peace.
Amen.